What is the mission that you find yourself on in this phase of your life?
For those who would like to get everyone who would like in as good of shape as possible with as minimum of a time investment, injury probability, and inconvenience in general as possible, and the highest likelihood of best results, while trying to completely excise doing anything that is pointless. And also, I say this politely, telling people things that aren't true. We're trying to get as many people fit, leaner, more muscular, more flexible, healthier, etc., as humanly possible, to the extent that they are interested in that sort of thing. Because not everyone's into fitness. I understand that. I mean, I think I look kind of, freaky, and it scares certain people. So I have a lot of time for that. But if you want to get fit, we're trying our best.
What are the big myths that end up standing in the way of most people when they hear this conversation now? What are the most frequent rebuttals that you'll get when you say that someone can get in shape and be lean with limited time?
Two super common ones are I don't have the time to work out. And into that time to work out is included I don't have regular gym access, or I technically do, but I'd have to drive to the gym. I just don't have the time and the bandwidth for it. I don't have the scheduling positioning in my life to do this sort of thing. And baked into that is the assumption that getting much healthier and much leaner and much more muscular takes like an inordinate amount of time. One of the most common questions I get out in the real world when people happen to look in my general direction, because usually people just kind of go like, what the hell's wrong with that guy's head? But one of the most common questions I get is, how many hours a day do you work out? Or how many days a week do you work out? And every single person is expecting an answer that is kind of like asking the tallest basketball player you've ever met how tall they are. You want an answer that's like 2.5 meters. You want something meaty. And if they tell you like, well, I'm a meter 90, you're kind of like, oh, isn't that cool? And every time I tell them how much I work out, which is really like at my real, like trying to be as good as bodybuilding as possible, it is really 8 hours a week. And this is to do this insane thing for people just trying to be fit and healthy, etc. We're talking about a sum total of 1 hour per week, split into 2 or 3 20-ish minute sessions, something we'll be trying later on, is such a huge stimulus and can radically transform your body, especially if you have attention to nutrition. And that's the second thing that's a big dogma, big myth, is people have ideas about what comes into nutrition, and nutrition for being more lean, more muscular, and healthier. They have all these kind of a constellation of ideas. Economist and philosopher Thomas Sowell calls them notions. So if you have a hierarchy of understanding, you have theory at the top, which is like gravitation, evolution, things super, super confirmed. Just beneath that, you have model, like the standard model in physics is not quite good enough support, be a theory, but it's a very well understood space with a few mysteries. Under that, you have a hypothesis, which is, you have a real good idea formally phrased. And underneath that, you have a notion. And a notion's just things people say, and people are like, uh-huh. And no one even asks or answers about, is this really true? And so when you talk to people about nutrition, or they talk to you about why they're not in such great shape, another thing I get is when you're pretty jacked and lean and you sit next to someone on a plane, they treat you almost like a religious figure, like a priest or an imam. And they're like, apologize. They're like, oh, you look like you're in good shape. I just haven't been to the gym. And I'm like, I love you as a human being, no
Really?
matter what,
People
all the time,
really?
all the time.
They apologize for the state they're in.
More or less, yeah. Or they'll see me eat a protein bar and they're getting like the food on the plane and they're like, this is bad for me, huh? And I'm like, no, it's actually quite fine. And they're always a little bit confused. So all these ideas people have about nutrition, organic, artificial sweeteners are bad, gluten-free, GMOs. You have to have very meticulously well-prepared meals. There is a ton of food that's huge laundry list of food that's unhealthy and bad for you, makes you fat. There are other foods that are a little bit more nuanced and difficult to find that are super health foods and will radically transform you. I can go on for hours about these myths, but people come in with these myths as notions, as things they believe that they're like, this is how it is, right? And when you tell them like, actually, that's not true, a lot of them are like, no way, because maybe that's the first time they've heard about it. So you tell people working out doesn't have to last forever. If you do it intelligently, which is what we specialize at RP about teaching people how to do and demonstrating in digital products, you can get into really, really good shape with not so much time investment, and it's not so difficult. Well, it's difficult in the moment as far as you got to try hard, but an hour of trying hard a week is not the end of the world. And then on a nutritional front, they come in and they think it takes all these crazy special things. Like people will watch me eat regular food and they'll be like, "You eat that?" I'm like, "Yes." Like, but I thought that, but you need the super special food. I was like, that's never been true. But people come in with their stack of ideas, and there's just dozens and dozens of myths on both ends.
We'll go through all of those myths, but my last question before we get into it is, why does it matter to be in good shape? And this is, I'm asking you here to really draw on some of the case studies that you've probably been exposed to, where people have turned their lives around. What is the net benefit of someone who's listening right now, who's maybe heard about fitness stuff before and has heard from personal trainers and bodybuilders and whoever else, but for whatever reason, they just haven't been able to get up off the sofa and get into action?
It's difficult.
Why should they? Why should they care?
I love that question. The first thing I'll say is maybe not a surprise to many of the people that know me. Politically, I'm like super pro freedom of all kinds, inclusion. And that means to me also that if someone doesn't want to pursue fitness, as a human being, you have the same love and respect, at least from me, that anyone who's fit would have. And so as far as like, it'll just make you a better person and you gotta get fit, people will see people that are obese and they're like lazy and how do they live with themselves? I don't ever think things like that. Not because I'm a good person. I'm not a good person at all. But what fitness won't give you is it won't elevate your status as a better person in some way. However, the other benefits of fitness, we could have a 10-hour podcast where I just go through them one at a time, and we would never get through all of them. I'll give you a couple of samplings of kind of the big hitters. One is health, straight up. So if you reduce your body fat substantially and you increase your muscularity substantially and you adopt a lifestyle of moderate to moderately high physical activity quite regularly, this is about as close in real life as we have so far to a panacea, a cure-all. It isn't cure-all, but the degree of preventative, you won't get really sick very soon effect that has is just radical. I, just coming off of them, but if it's okay to say, it was recently on like a boatload of steroids, like the worst ones. Got blood work right in the middle of that. Because I was very lean and very physically active and very muscular, my blood work's stellar. Just being leaner and more muscular and more active just cleans your blood work up like crazy and makes your long-term, it increases your longevity considerably, but it does something I think is pretty close to equally important. It increases the kind of time you're having in your life while you're alive. It makes it way better. It reduces the morbidity. And so, because you can be around a long time living in an assisted care facility and like on machines to keep you, you're alive, sure, but there's something missing there. But if you have more muscle, less fat, and more physical activity, you ever see like an 80-year-old that's like cardio walking down the street and you're like, my man, it'll give you that. So that's a big deal. So health, it'll give you, usually people experience a perception of wellness that's psychological. They just feel better. They feel cleaner. They feel more energy. The cognitive benefits of health and fitness are now being addressed seriously in the literature, and they have been for a little while, but it's kind of swelling. Is unequivocally true now to say that regularly engaging in fitness makes you literally smarter, just straight up. And it conserves your brain's cognitive health for decades into the future as you do it consistently. It's just win all the way across.
What is your background in terms of your academic qualifications and experiences that you've had that feed into everything that you know?
Sounds so pretentious. I can't believe I'm using this nomenclature, but I did my undergraduate work at the University of Michigan, where I met my fellow co-founder of RP, Nick Shaw. And that was in kinesiology, specifically a subset of something called movement science. I then went on to do a master's in technically strength and conditioning, but exercise science at Appalachian State University. Then I went for 1 year to go work in New York City with Nick as a personal trainer. At the end of that process, I realized that for my own personal like vibe, I just didn't know enough. and I wanted to know more. And so I got accepted to a PhD program at East Tennessee State University under the great Mike Stone, who is probably one of the most well-published sports scientists of all time. Maybe definitely in the conversation for the greatest American sports scientist of all time. And I went to that PhD program, and that was in sport physiology. And the best way we had of summarizing what it is we were learning is the thing we're learning best here is how to take good athletes and make them better. And so I did 3 years of that. It sounds like it's like a prison time. I did 3 years in ETSU, and that was the conclusion. I was a terminal degree. I got a PhD in sport physiology. And then I spent, 10 years in various professorships, teaching and doing some research and all this other stuff. I'm no longer a college professor, mostly because like there's only so many things you can do at the same time. Well, and it was kind of like this YouTube thing is getting kind of insane. So it's time to pivot to that. But I'm still actively involved in research. Our company funds research. I still look at manuscripts. I still co-author. So I'm still involved in that capacity as well.
So I want to start with a start. If someone's listening to this right now and they have walked into this is your practice, this is your hypertrophy practice, let's say, this table, and they sit there and they say, I would like to gain more lean muscle mass and I'd like to lose some weight. I live a busy life. Where do we start? What's step one? And like, I'm actually going to hazard a guess at step one and to see if I'm correct. But for me, step one is quite psychological, because it's all well and good me having the tactics and strategies and the information. But if I don't have the motivation, none of it's going to matter anyway. So is step one psychological in some way?
Absolutely. My God, you should just be taking my job at this point.
No, but okay, I thought so. I thought that was. So what would you do for me to get me in the right psychological mindset?
I would even take a step back before that.
Okay.
The first thing we do is called a needs analysis in formal sports science. A needs analysis is, what do you want specifically? Do you want bigger arms? How much muscle are you trying to gain? It's a very different conversation if someone weighs 150 pounds and they're like, I want to be 155 but leaner, versus I weigh 150 pounds and I want to be 200 ripped. Different timelines, different approaches, different trade-offs.
Okay, give me the typical answer to that question.
Most people just open-ended, to be completely honest. They're like, I just want to get much leaner. And some of them will say, I also want to put on a lot of muscle. The muscle thing is a lot of times with females that just want the leaner part, but they understand in many cases that if they just jettison their muscle entirely, they end up looking more sick than healthy. But a lot of the males, leaner is important, but also getting super jacked is important. But how jacked and how lean, that's the conversation. Is if they come in with totally open-ended concerns, it's kind of like walking into a car dealership and being like, I want a car. Like, you're going to have to be a little, now we'll sell you whatever, but you're going to have to tell me a little bit more about what your use cases are, about what your budget is. So that's another big thing in a needs analysis is how much time can you give to this? Because if someone says, I want to eventually be a professional bodybuilder and I've got nothing but time in my week to do the thing, they're getting a very different plan than someone that's like, I just want to be able to see my man down there again and like just not die soon. And I have 2 hours a week to give you. Very different plan.
So let's say I've got a couple of hours a week. So, 2-3 hours a week that I could probably spare, maybe 4. And I just want to get a bit leaner and I want to gain some muscle.
Yeah. I also ask, what have you been doing so far? Tell me about your approach to fitness. And the answer could be, I don't have one. I've never tried to do anything. Once we get a lot of that information, I don't want to say the plan writes itself, but sort of almost. Now we really, really, really have all the details to fill in the blanks.
And then from there, once you've done that sort of needs analysis and you've understood the investment that they're willing to make, you understand what their goals are, you understand their current approach to fitness, what becomes step 2? So if, again, I'm trying to embody the viewer here who's trying to change their life.
Yeah.
And get going for
step 2. Oftentimes, just to keep it, we definitely do nutrition if you'd like. So please cue me in for that. But I'll just use training as a quick example here. A big one is, do you go to a gym? Can you make it to a gym, or are you going to be training at home? Because training at home is a bit of a different world. You can get amazing results at home, but we need to make sure you have the right equipment. And it's super minimal. 2 20-pound dumbbells. I like that you're looking over at the dumbbells like,
Are those 20 kg dumbbells?
They're 20-pound dumbbells.
Is that what I need at home?
For many people, 20 like adult males, quite spry like yourself, 20-pound dumbbells at home will give you phenomenal overall results. Yeah. What is that? 9 kgs or something? Oh, here we go. Your assistants are quite strong, by the way.
Thank
Do you fight crime in your spare time?
you. Okay, so these are 20-pound dumbbells.
You're just showing off now.
But these are what I need at home to do a workout.
Yeah, somewhere between 10 and 20 pounds, 10 for smaller, lighter females, 20 for larger, more strong males, somewhere between that. 2 of those dumbbells at home and a little bit of floor space can be the beginning of an absolutely revolutionary workout program.
Really?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
How so? Give me the starting position and the end position that I could get to just with these dumbbells at home.
If you properly control your diet and you haven't really lifted weights before, and you're, let's say, 30, 40, 50 years old, in a 6-month time span, we can reliably get you to gain 5 to 10 pounds of muscle, which if you go to the store, what is that like? 5, let's say, 2 to 5 kilos of muscle. You ever buy 2 to 5 kilos of meat at the store?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of meat. That's going on your body. And we can reliably get you to lose, 5 to 7.5 kilos of fat in a 6-month time frame just by being intelligent about your diet and doing 2 workouts per week at home with your dumbbells. And the workouts each take roughly 20 minutes.
So that's 40 minutes a week.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. Now, that's if you're unaccustomed and unadjusted. If you have already, and that's why those intake questions are important. Because if you're like, look, I go to the gym 6 times a week, I spend 2 hours at the gym, like, them dumbbells can keep you in pretty good shape, but they're not going to elevate your shape very likely. At the very least, it'll be highly inefficient and incredibly discomforting for what you'd have to do with such dumbbells.
So what is step 3 then? So if we've got the equipment part figured out, and I guess the complicated element of that is some people have anxiety as it relates to going to the gym. I've got a lot of friends that, because they're so inexperienced with weightlifting or the machines, they feel embarrassed to go to the gym. So that, well, at least that's what they tell me. Now, I don't know whether they're BSing themselves, but they tell me that they have gym anxiety.
Yes.
You know,
that's a
you
big
walk,
thing.
and actually, I can relate. You walk into a gym, especially if I go to like a bodybuilding gym, and I do look around and I go, okay, everyone here knows what they're doing more than I do.
Ooh, that's already wrong, but we'll get to that in a bit.
And are they looking at me? Do they know that I don't know how this machine works? And if I don't know how a machine works and there's nothing, no label to tell me, sometimes I just avoid the machine. If I'm in like a bodybuilding gym, because I go, if I can help, I don't know how to do my wrist muscles.
Yeah. I just look like a doofus and everyone's making fun of me in their
That's kind of
heads.
what I think sometimes. If I go to like a really elite gym, so.
Yeah. So first of all, I think people's gym anxiety is absolutely a real thing. I can speak to that at length. The next step would be to say, hey, listen, based on all the information we've collected on your limitations, desires, abilities, we've cultivated a plan for you. It could be a diet plan, and just stick into the muscle growth stuff. Here's your plan for your training. And we actually have an app for this sort of thing where we would say, okay, here's how you type in all your stuff in the app. The app will create a plan for you, and it'll tell you, here's what to do for warming up. Here's, you pick a weight. It tells you how to pick your weights, and then it programs the rest of your 2 months of training for you. You fill in the, how do I feel? How am I recovering? It'll take care of everything else. And if you ever get confused, you click on the exercise and it opens up a video with an audio demonstration of how to do it and of someone, a professional bodybuilder, doing the thing. And you go, oh, that's what bicep curls was. Okay, got it. So now you have all the answers, and you don't have to have our app. We think it's nice. You don't have to have it. Just whatever kind of plan you have, that's your little map of the Caribbean Sea with the X's and the pirate ships. And you know exactly where to go. And it's you, your app or your map of how to train your program, and everyone else, like in the Avengers movies, just floats away. There's no one else. There's not even any other machines. It's you and the bicep curl machine. And the hypertrophy app says, first set is 12 reps at 50 pounds. I take the select dry stack, I go to 50, and I'm nice and warmed up, and I do 12 reps. And that's as far as you have to think about it. Comparisons, whatever anyone else thinks, without a plan, oh boy, are you second guessing yourself. With a plan, you don't have to second guess anything. Most of those people don't have a plan. They're just in there on vibes. Like, yeah, I feel like my delts are going to grow today if I do this. Like, thanks. Thanks for that intellectual opinion.
You said there's 2 types of effective training. One of them's I can't say this word. One of them's hypertrophy,
Very good.
and the other one is periodization.
So periodization is the scientifically based organization of any kind of training that you want.
Okay.
Hypertrophy training is a type of training. It's just muscle growth training. It's like a fancy fucking science word for just getting more jacked, putting on muscle. That's the technical definition of hypertrophy. And when you train for hypertrophy, you can do it kind of like by feel and more or less at random, and you'll get pretty good results in most cases. But to get your best results, you want that training to be periodized. Periodization is the scientific approach to how to organize your training to get sort of roughly three things. Some of these are a bit more for athletes and not regular people. Get the best results that you can, peak at an appropriate time, abs for summer, and minimize injury risk. And taking all the science that we know, that plan that you've made because you did it in an evidence-based fashion, that is now what is considered a periodized plan. So that's how those two concepts relate to each other.
What do I need to know about hypertrophy in order to be able to achieve it? Is there anything really foundational? Because I think everyone wants a bit of muscle growth.
Yeah.
I think I spend too long in the gym. I think I could be much more efficient when I'm training. What would you recommend that I start thinking about as foundational principles when it comes to hypertrophy muscle growth?
One is specificity. It's the most important principle in all of sport training and exercise science is what am I here for? What do I want? Because you can do a bunch of exercises in the gym and you're like, that was great. And someone's like, are you getting the results you like? And you're like, well, what I want is a bigger bicep. Like, how many bicep exercises do you do? Like, I think upright rows, maybe.
So I want a bigger bicep.
Bicep.
If we just focus on me getting Stephen Bartlett a bigger left bicep.
So specificity is telling yourself, okay, I want bigger biceps and whatever XYZ other muscles. Then we move in to the principle of overload, which means you have to challenge yourself. If most of your sets, someone else watching them can't tell if you're warming up or doing what's called a working set, like a real set, you have a problem. So towards the end of all of your sets, either the weights are slowing down, or even if it's the same speed, to you, they feel perceptively harder. You know, you do this, and in a couple reps, you're like, "Ugh." That's what you want. Every real working set should be challenging. You should be approaching every real set with just a teeny dose of trepidation. Like, oh boy, here we go. I'm going to have to try. Once you have that.
And a set is a group of repetitions.
Correct.
So if I do 10 repetitions, that's one set.
One set.
Okay.
Yeah. And so your sets have to be sufficiently heavy. Anything between roughly 5 reps per set and 30 reps per set, where the last few reps are getting close to you not being able to use good technique and lift the weights, check plus.
So there's not a perfect amount of repetitions to do.
There is. It's a trade secret, and I'd have to say it off camera to you. But
Okay.
NDA to sign.
Okay, we're off camera.
All right, great. So it's 17. There's just tons of contextual nuance kind of stuff. Some people, some of their muscles will respond better to sets of 5 to 10. Other folks, even the same person could have muscles in their body that really respond better to sets of 20 to 30 and everything in between. But generally you get in the exercise science data, you'll have a group of people training for sets of roughly 5 reps, and another group training for sets of roughly 30 reps. And their change in muscle growth over 8, 12, 16 weeks is statistically undifferentiable, which means if I delabel the groups and you don't know which one's which, you can't actually tell me who trained with higher reps or low reps. For muscle growth, it's roughly the same.
That's so crazy. We're using the same weight. I'm guessing.
No, different weights.
Different weights. Okay.
A weight that is challenging for 5 reps is much heavier than a weight that is challenging for 30.
Okay. So I do wonder this all the time when I go to the gym. I wonder if I should be doing, I don't know, 30 reps of 10 kg on my bicep, or I should be doing 10 reps of 20 kg.
They're both right answers. No wrong answers there.
And they both have the same chance of growing my muscles, as long as the strain that I experience subjectively is difficult at the end of those sets.
Correct.
Okay, interesting.
Which is really good news, because that's like another thing you don't have to worry about.
Which means at home I can get any range of weights versus having to get really, really big ones to grow my muscles.
As long as they're not so tiny that you're on rep number 45 and you're like, I could just do this for forever. Or they're not so enormous that you're like, I can't really even do 2 reps of this. Anything between roughly 5 and roughly 30 reps, challenging, is really, really good.
How many sets and how often do I have to visit the gym to get this bicep to grow?
That answer depends on how much you've been doing before.
Okay.
But if you're new to the gym, 2 sessions a week with 2 to 3 sets per session for your biceps is something that's going to cause months and months and months of consistent progress.
Really?
Can you do more? Yes. Do you have to do as a beginner? No. Eventually, as a more advanced person, do you need to do more sets and perhaps more sessions to get consistently better results? Yes. But for beginners who haven't been in the gym very much or at all, the minimal effective dose is profoundly small, which is why I can say things like if you work out for 20 minutes twice a week, you're going to get great gains.
What if I go to the gym and I do 6 sets on my biceps and I just go to the gym once a week? Does the distance between the workouts in a muscle group have an impact?
Yes. Once a week training gives you good results, but twice a week training for the same muscle gives you notably better results. Training 3 times a week versus twice, training 4 times a week versus 3 times, training 5 times a week versus 4 times is an exponentially de-escalating amount of impressive differences. So 1 time a week works. It'll get you results. 2 times a week gets you like 1.5 times the results, like way better. 3 times a week is like another little bit more results, still notable. 4 times a week is like, you got to be training for a while to notice the difference between 3 and 4. 4 and 5 is contextual and nuanced, and I can't actually tell you that categorically 5 days a week is better than 4. There are some things I would have to know about your plan and everything else to make that conclusion.
So really, I want to be aiming at twice a week per muscle group.
Twice is our minimum. 2 to 4 times a week is what I say is kind of the best overall recommendation per muscle group. And if you train all of your muscles together at the same time, a whole body workout, which most people in the realm of just, I'm busy and I can't train a lot, it would be all of the major muscles of your body in the same session, twice or 3 times or 4 times a week. And that is an awesome beginner fitness plan.
What's going on in my muscles that's encouraging them and making them grow? And when are they growing? Is it when I go to bed at night? Is it when do they grow the minute that I curl the dumbbell? What's actually going on? Because sometimes understanding what's actually going on inside helps me to think through and change my behavior.
Yeah. So the primary stimulus for muscle growth is there are molecular machines in your muscles, in your muscle cells, and they are designed to detect the presence of tension. And when your muscles generate tension, the molecular detector machines go, ooh, we got tension here. And they start saying to other parts of the cells, like, hey, let's get this muscle growth thing started. Started, not happening, started. It's a stimulus of muscle growth. There are a couple of other mechanisms which might/probably have an effect. And that a couple of them are metabolite sequestration, which is a very fancy way of saying the burn. You know, at the end of a set, you're like, the metabolites, the byproducts of training, if they accumulate to high levels, it's been shown in tons of animal studies and a few human studies that like mechanistically, they might also tell the molecular machinery that grows muscle for you again later to, hey, get the muscle growth process. Another one is the pump. So, you do a couple sets of biceps. You're like, oh my God, what's going on here, baby? Flash it at some girl. She runs away as usual. And the actual cell swelling itself might play a causal mechanistic role in generating more muscle growth. But we know it's probably at least 80% of the muscle growth anyone will see is because of those receptors for tension. Muscle growth, as soon as you leave the gym, is a negative because the gym is catabolic. It breaks down your muscle. Actually training breaks down more muscle than it builds. However, as you go home and you start eating food, protein, carbs, fats, and you have several meals per day and you're resting, when the food's coming in, several hours after training begins, if you measure muscle growth consistently, which is real difficult to do, they don't do it super often. You have to keep people in a laboratory. You have to do radioactive tracers and measure all this weird stuff. Every couple of hours they measure, the amount of muscle growth that's going on in the biceps goes up and up and up and up. And it usually peaks about half a day to a day and a half after you lift, depending on how hard you went. If it's a pretty easy workout, it peaks a little sooner and dives and drops off about a day or two later. If you train really crazy hard, it'll peak like a day and a half later, and then half a week later, it'll drop off back to baseline levels. But it's this really smooth curve, and you're growing muscle at every single point under that curve. So when you say, is it while I'm sleeping? Is it while I'm eating? Is it while I'm resting? The answer is all of those. except it's not at the gym. You don't grow muscle at the gym. You give yourself a signal to grow muscle at the gym. And then what you do outside of the gym matters. So some people train really hard. They don't eat right. They don't eat enough protein. Their sleep is total, insert bad word here. And their stress levels are just totally psychotic. They train hard. And then week after week after week, they're like, not seeing any results. Well, the results are actually created when you're resting, when you're sleeping, when you're eating nutritious food. They're stimulated in the workout, but that's just phase one. Phase two, the actual growth occurs outside of the gym, and it occurs not at any specific time point, like a magic window of 2 hours after the gym. Like that's when all the growth occurs. That's actually when it just starts to go up. It's for days afterwards. So if you train twice a week, you train on Monday, you're growing a lot of muscle on Monday night, Tuesday and Wednesday. Back towards the end of Wednesday, you're just not really growing much more muscle. You go back to the gym Thursday, you hit it hard again, you hit that curve up. By Sunday, you're totally relaxed. During Sunday, you're not growing any muscle. Your body's really recovering a lot of that fatigue. And then by Monday, you're fresh as a pickle and you're ready to go at it again.
How long will it take me to lose the muscles that I've gained if I don't go back to the gym? So again, focusing on this bicep, I train it, I do 2 times a week, I get it nice and big. How long before it vanishes?
Great question. Two-part answer. Part one is within about 2 weeks of not training it, the first reduction in muscle that is detectable by modern machinery occurs. So if you don't lift for 2 weeks and we put you in an MRI scanner or a DEXA scanner, let's say a week and a half you don't lift, I can't tell. You're not really losing any muscle yet. You're just going insane. And so me personally, I'm like addicted to lifting. So if I don't lift for a week, I'm like, oh my God, all my muscle's gone. There is some kind of intuitive truth to that, because when you don't stress your muscles, when you do stress your muscles, they get a little bit inflamed and they bulge up a little bit. So when you're not training for half a week to a week, your muscles look smaller, like they've lost weight, but it's really just all water that they lost. You do one gym session thinking like, oh my God, my biceps are gone. A week and a half later, you do one session. At the end of that, you flex and you're like, oh my God, I'm the biggest I've ever been. I was just delusional that whole time, because that stuff comes back super quick. After about 2 weeks of not lifting, you start to lose muscle, but it happens really, really slowly and takes weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. After several months of not lifting, you're going to look considerably smaller in your biceps, but probably not as small as when you started lifting, because your muscles have a certain memory, if we can call it that.
Is that true? That muscle
Very
memory
true.
thing?
Oh, yeah. And so a lot of times when you gain an initial amount of muscle, especially if you've been at it for years, it just never goes back to the same size as when you started. It's just always going to be bigger until you reach your 80s or something like that. That being said, yes, you will notice reductions in size. So 2 weeks is the direct answer there. And it's going to take weeks and weeks and months to recede. However, here's part two, and this is awesome news. Because of that muscle memory situation, however long it took you to gain the muscles initially, it's going to take you an order of magnitude, a factor of 10-ish or so less time to get it back. If you've been more jacked before, if you've had bigger muscles, they come back to their old size. If you lifted for 8 months, you got a bigger bicep, and you stopped lifting for 3 months, and it looks about the same as when you started. If you're really careful, like, okay, it's a little bit bigger, but really it's just back to square one. Most people think, oh my God, another 8 months just to get back to where I started? Like, forget the gym. The truth is, after roughly about a month, maybe as little as 3 weeks, you're going to have the same size biceps that you did in your peak. Because the degree to which your tissue grows, if it's been a certain size before, especially if it was notably bigger than normal and you held that around for a few months and a few years, it comes back in a way that is so fast. If you experience it yourself, it's like you don't believe that it's happening to you. You
Have they
gain
been able
back.
to like scientifically test this?
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah, retraining studies, detraining, retraining. Oh yeah, they've done studies where they purposefully like lift for a while and they stop lifting for a long time and they see how long it takes to get back. And there's one study I'm familiar with offhand that there's a group of people that trained consistently for multiple weeks, and there's another group of people that trained consistently for a few weeks and then took 2 weeks completely off in the middle and then just started retraining again for a few weeks later. Both groups had identically sized differences in muscle at the end of the study. And so you're like, okay, so So that group that trained consistently never took 2 weeks off. Could we say that they purposefully like dunked 2 weeks of their time away for nothing? Uh huh. Yeah, your body goes right back into regaining old lost muscle so rapidly that this is such great news because look, let's say you lifted consistently most of the year. Holiday season comes up, winter holidays. You're not going to the gym as much, maybe not at all. 3 weeks later of no gym, you look at yourself, you look a little small or kind of deflated, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to have to restart all this from scratch.
Mm.
Nope. 2 weeks later, you're in the best shape of your life again. If you left the gym for 6 months, 1 or 2 months later, you're in the best shape of your life again. That's how rapidly it comes back. So it's really good news for anyone who hasn't been in the gym and is feeling guilty about it. Go back, get consistent again. You're just going to skyrocket.